Injustice in America has always been an outstanding problem, especially when it comes to racial injustice that is done to the minorities. So many minorities suffer injustice, whether it be in their communities, schools, or just in everyday life. Racial injustice has shown its face most prominently when it comes to the legal system within America. Minorities, specifically African Americans, have been shot by the police despite being unarmed and sometimes not even resisting arrest. The shots could either leave the victim badly injured or even end the victim's life. The issue of police brutality has gotten so bad that people have felt the need to protest in order to address the magnitude of the issue. These protests have come in the forms of public addresses by stars, the Black Lives Matter protests, and most notably, players on all 32 NFL teams that have protested during the playing of the national anthem in order for the issue of racial inequality in America to be recognized. Initially, the peaceful protests began in the form of the Black Lives Matter movement after the killing of 17-year-old African-American Trayvon Martin by Neighborhood Watch leader George Zimmerman on February 26 of 2012. Martin was visiting his father, Tracy Martin, in Sanford, Florida, after receiving a 10-day suspension from school because of drug residue found in his school bag. While walking home from a trip to 7-Eleven with only an Arizona iced tea and bag of Skittles in hand, Martin was spotted by the Neighborhood Watch captain, George Zimmerman, in his father's neighborhood. Zimmerman called the police from his patrol vehicle and described Martin as a suspicious person. The police instructed Zimmerman not to leave his vehicle or approach Martin, but he did anyway. Moments later, gunshots were reported as being heard by the neighbors of Martin's father. Zimmerman had just shot Martin in quote-unquote self-defense because he was quote-unquote fearing for his life, and later Martin was pronounced dead when authorities arrived. Even though Zimmerman did have some injuries when examined by authorities, he didn't have any injuries that would indicate that Martin had a deadly weapon or applied deadly force to Zimmerman. This killing, along with many others, sparked the Black Lives Matter movement in order to bring attention to the unjust killing of unarmed black people within America by police. Because the issue continued to be a problem after this movement began, the protests began to spread all around the U.S. and even into sports leagues, most notably the NFL. In 2016, Colin Kaepernick, then the San Francisco 49ers starting quarterback, decided to kneel during the performance of the national anthem for all that season's games. He did this in order to open the public's eye to the racial injustice that is happening within America's law enforcement system.
The lyrics of the national anthem rang out in Levi Stadium for what, so we thought, was a meaningless preseason game. But what went mostly unnoticed at the time surely is anything but meaningless now.
It's to bring awareness and make people realize what's really going on in this country. There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust, people aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change.
Kaepernick was later joined by many other players in the years to come that would eventually earn national attention and backlash or support from the public. For example, Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins kneeled during the playing of the anthem during many games of the 2017-18 season and had the support of his teammate, defensive end Chris Long.
Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins, he joins us now on the 6. Malcolm, Chris Long putting his arm around you as you raised your fist during the anthem has become sort of a lasting image. You said that it changed the dynamic of the conversation. How so?
Well, I think, obviously starting from last year with Colin Kaepernick all the way through the first, week of preseason, this has been primarily, done by black athletes. And there's been a call and a challenge to, white athletes to also use their leverage and their privilege and platform to stand up for the causes that their, fellow teammates have done. And Chris obviously was the first person to do that. And I think, in light of what happened in Charlottesville and all that's going on in the country, when we took in the conversation between hate and racism, I thought it was timely and definitely very, very impactful.
The backlash the players in the NFL have received has come from many outlets, but mostly from the fans that believe the protests are unpatriotic or disrespectful to the American flag and the country's veterans. Colin Kaepernick has said many times that the protests are not about the flag. They are about the racial injustice that continues to lurk within America itself and within the American legal system. If fans think the protests are so against patriotism, then why don't they get angry when they see someone talking on the phone, texting, or Snapchatting during the playing of the anthem? Why do they not get angry when the playing of the anthem isn't televised for that night's game? Isn't that the same thing as being disrespectful to the flag or being unpatriotic? These fans must not seem to realize that a whole lot more unarmed African Americans are being killed by police than any other race within America. As if the killings of Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Trayvon Martin, and many others weren't proof enough. The percentages of unarmed African Americans being killed by police is significantly higher than that of white people and Hispanics. In 2015 alone, 14.67% of unarmed black people were killed in the U.S. by police, while only 11.05% were Hispanic and 6.04% were white. In 2016 and 2017, the percentages for each race dropped significantly, but the African Americans were still being killed the most. There was even dashcam footage of a white cop doing a routine traffic stop and insulting a white woman for being too scared to move because she was aware of the issue of cops unjustly killing people. The cop then said, "We only kill black people," in order to gain compliance from the woman. Situations like these are what make people fear for their life while riding down the highway. They know that there are cops out there that are blatantly racist and will abuse their power as a member of law
The video
enforcement.
shows a Cobb County, Georgia police officer talking to a woman in a car he pulled over on a traffic stop. She's unwilling to move her hands, afraid, she says, of getting shot, and he tells her, "Don't worry."
But you're not black. Remember, we only kill black people. Yeah, we only kill black people, right? All the videos you've seen, have you seen any black people get killed?
Though it happened a year ago, the video is just now coming to light. The officer, Lieutenant Greg Abbott, has been on the force nearly 30 years. His lawyer says he was, quote, trying to gain compliance by using the passenger's own statements. But the county's new police chief said today that what happened was unacceptable.
I don't know what's in his heart, but I certainly know what came out of his mouth. The recommendation is to terminate his employment from the Cobb County Police Department.
The date stamp on the video, July 10th, 2016.
Stay with me.
Just 4 days after cell phone video went viral showing the moments after a white policeman killed a black driver, Philando Castile, in Minnesota.
The players of the NFL are just exercising their constitutional rights of free speech and peaceful protest. But yet people feel the need to bash them because they are bringing attention to something that they would rather see swept under the rug and not be recognized as an issue. Malcolm Jenkins said himself, "It's just funny how in society, if we were to talk about any other topic, it usually wouldn't be as conflicting. But once you start talking about black issues, like issues of poverty or racism, it's like a distraction." Probably the biggest critics of the protest have been the President and Vice President of the United States, Donald Trump and Mike Pence. President Trump has voiced his opinion on the matter plenty of times to the public at rallies and even on Twitter. The president's views on the issue have brought even more attention to it, but in support of the view that it is disrespectful to the flag. The president states that NFL owners should fire or suspend players that kneel during the playing of the anthem. Vice President Pence even stood up and left an Indianapolis Colts game because the players on the field were kneeling during the anthem and showing disrespect to the flag.
One of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, "Get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired."
NFL team owners can fire their players, sadly, because when you work for a private sector and your employer is not the government, the Constitution gives you zero protection in terms of keeping your job based on what you say. Luckily, no players have been fired as a result of Donald Trump's comments, because Roger Goodell and the NFL released a statement saying that even though they believe each and every player should stand for the national anthem, the league will not dismiss any players that decide to exercise their right of free speech or peaceful protest. Whether you believe players should stand for the anthem or not, it is important to know that the protests are not about the flag at all. Players are exercising their constitutional rights of free speech and peaceful protest in order to bring attention to the racial injustice people of color are enduring within America and its legal system. A lot more unarmed minorities are dying to police brutality than those that are Caucasian. The police brutality has made people begin to feel unsafe while walking the streets or driving down the highway.
used to think that I had a strategy, right? Is keep the voice calm, like be like, hey, I am now reaching for my wallet. My keys are on the roof. My hands are up, officer. Walking them step by step, and that still wasn't enough to keep him alive.
As an adult black male living in this country, my biggest fear now is leaving work, leaving the apartment, wherever, walking down the sidewalk, making eye contact with a white police officer who takes it as a threat, getting out of his squad car, and then unloading his entire clip into my chest because I quote-unquote threatened him.
The players are only trying to bring attention to this issue so that the problem can be solved, not to make another problem that distracts from the more important task at hand. Be sure to ask yourself this question the next time you see someone protesting during the anthem. If you saw tons of people like yourself being killed unjustifiably in your country, would you stand out in the crowd and make a statement for change so that life is better for you and your community? Or would you sit in silence and watch as more and more people die at the hands of those who abuse the power of their jobs?